Hi, my name is Noel Sands, and I would like to talk to y'all about perceptions and the role they play in interpersonal conflict. I find these topics fascinating because in my own life, I hear my friends telling stories and commenting about how rude somebody was, and then I ask them, what did they do that was so rude? And my favorite answer that I've had to these questions was, well, it was a text, and you can just tell they were being rude. They have applied their perceptions of that person to text messages that are inherently lack depth and emotion. And to address this situation, first we must discuss perception. What it is, what factors influence it, and why it's important. Our textbook, the second edition of Weston Turner's Interpersonal Communication, defines perception as the process of using our senses to understand and respond to stimuli. The perception process occurs in four stages: attending and selecting, organizing, interpreting, and retrieving. Now, what exactly does this mean? Well, simply, it's the act of using our five senses to observe or understand something. The first stage, attending and selecting, deals with focusing on something and ignoring the less important background noise. Performing this stage effectively is important in becoming a mindful observant and will increase the efficacy of your interpersonal interactions. The second stage, organizing, is where we sort the observations we have made into a more comprehensible picture, often placing them into categories that make sense to us. And in some cases, we develop what are called relational schemas, which are just preconceived notions about how a message is going to be delivered based on how that person commonly delivers messages. The example the book provides is that if Jenny only receives rude messages from her boss, that she will likely receive all messages from her boss as rude, whether or not he is in fact being rude in that particular instance. Understanding this is important because if we develop unhealthy relational schemas, then we often feel attacked and belittled all the time, even when someone is not trying to be. It often becomes a circular thinking of, well, hey, this person is always rude to me, so why should I be polite to them, when the other person is thinking the exact same thing, resulting in the deterioration of a relationship and, in some cases, awkward interactions. The third stage, interpreting, is where we assign meanings to the things we perceive. This stage is often where we fail to incorporate everything we know about a certain situation, resulting in a skewed perception. The final stage, the fourth stage, is referred to as retrieving and involves the retrieval of previous information from our memories. Aside from superficial things, all other aspects of perception tend to be largely based on remembering things from previous interactions. This is important to understand because we must be careful about how people perceive us, because that perception is often assigned to us in the future, even if we are behaving differently. A widely cited quote, which happens to lack an original author because of its widespread use, is "First impressions are lasting impressions," which I believe summarizes the importance of being cognitive of how people perceive you, especially upon initial meeting. Now to discuss interpersonal conflict, which our book defines as the interaction of interdependent people who perceive incompatible goals and interference from each other in achieving these goals. This definition relies on four parts: interaction, interdependence, perception, and incompatible goals. By this definition, it's important to note that in order for conflict to be present, there has to be an interaction between two or more people. Typically, we think of this as being an argument, but it can be conducted with nonverbal cues. The second part, interdependence, states that both parties must be connected somehow, otherwise conflict would just not happen. It would just be a waste of time and effort. For example, an argument about where someone should go for the holidays might arise conflict within family members, but would most likely be ignored by strangers or coworkers. Perception is the third part of conflict, and we have already discussed a little bit. However, when perception is viewed in the context of conflict, it becomes clear why communicating effectively and being perceived accurately proves to be crucial in avoiding unnecessary conflict. Often, conflict can arise from misinformed perception. Conversely, the opposite can occur: a lack of conflict because of the assumption that two parties agree when in fact they don't. This often leads to more complicated conflicts down the road. The final aspect of conflict is the presence of incompatible goals. An example of this would be if you wanted to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch, but your friend wants to go to Cane's. While you could go to both, most likely a discussion would ensue with you citing your perception of each restaurant, and then your friend citing their perception of each restaurant, until a compromise is made or the deterioration of a friendship. However, if you want to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch, and your friend wants to go to the movies after dinner, there would be no conflict because your goals are compatible. In conclusion, perception is very important in today's society, with strangers often assigning certain attributes to you based on their perception of you. It is important to mindfully observe a situation and avoid negative relational schemas. Understanding perception and its role in society will help you behave in accordance with how you want to be perceived, paving the way for your success. While conflict is inevitable, understanding it will help you avoid unnecessary conflict, as well as participate more effectively when conflict does arise. As my farewell, I'm going to show you a Super Bowl commercial from 2011 that I think humorously shows a conflict based on misunderstandings. And ironically, this commercial relies on the viewer's perception that elderly people are hard of hearing. Enjoy.
The Chevy Cruze Eco gets up to 42 miles per gallon.
What? Sam, get your ears cleaned out.
What did he say?
42 wild Italians.
Huh?
It's a cruise for plus-size individuals. It's a commercial, that's all.
I'm pretty
What?
sure
No.
he said the Chevy Cruze Eco.
A commercial for Eagles? Eagles, no, Eco.
It's the Chevy Cruze Eco gets up to 42 miles per gallon.
Who asked you?